All right. For those of you that come to Good Morning Seminole regularly, you know we usually do some table networking and things like that now, but we're not doing that today. We're mixing it up, and we're going to jump right into the main event and the reason that nearly 300 people are here this morning. Thank you so much again for coming out to be part of this conversation. So first, let's bring up our candidates running for Florida's 7th Congressional District seat. Alan Grayson, Democrat. He's coming in. There was an accident on one of the roads, so we had some traffic jams this morning. Ryan Elijah, Republican. And as I say your name, just come on up and grab your seat. Michael Don Johnson, Republican. Bale Dalton, Democrat. Cory Lee Mills, Republican. Marialana Kinter, Democrat. Sarah Ulrich, Republican. Did Christopher make it through the traffic jam? Nope, okay. All right, next I'm going to introduce our moderators and our timekeeper for the discussion today. Please welcome Lauren Miller, Vice President from J. Wayne Miller Company. Mike Brockman, President of Brockman Insurance. Tekoa Puri, CEO and President, The Sharing Center. And our timekeeper with perhaps the hardest job today, Jennifer Engler, founder and managing partner of the Orlando Law Group. All right, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer a question. With 30 seconds remaining, our timekeeper will show a green card. At 45 seconds, she will show the yellow card. At 1 minute, she'll show a red card. She will stand if you go over your time. So I'm going to now hand this over to the moderators. Again, thank you, candidates, for being here today.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Jennifer, our wonderful timekeeper, I know you already heard how that's going to work. Our opening and closing order has been determined by Google, automatically generated, just randomly, so nothing done there besides a random generation. And we're asking for a 1 minute introduction from each of you, and we would also like you to share your top business issue that you will be addressing today. And we would like to start with Mr. Grayson.
Well, thanks. What I want to say is that I would be the best person for this job for every one of you. I was a congressman representing Seminole County and other counties for 6 years. I brought us the VA hospital. That's a $600 million project. I brought us so many jobs and so much federal money that when I started, our unemployment rate was higher than statewide, and when I finished, our unemployment rate was much lower than statewide. Got $1 billion worth of road projects for this area. You probably drove on a Grayson road on the way here today. And I also tried my best to keep the cost of living down. In particular, I was the only foe we've really had locally on tolls. My view is no tolls, no gas taxes, no taxes on driving. So if you want a congressman who's going to make your life better, that's me. The most important issue is to keep business going, to keep the local economy going, and that is elevated by bringing in money from outside, including, most importantly, federal money.
Good morning, I'm Ryan Elijah. What a great event today, by the way. We had a late debate last night, so it's nice to get up early and see a room full of people today. So I've lived and worked in Seminole County the last 14 years. Coaching Lake Mary Little League Baseball as well, not the team that went to the Little League World Series, but we did build that foundation a little bit. Also coached high school basketball. My wife works here in Lake Mary as well. And of course, I worked for 14 years at Fox 35, which is just a few miles from here in Lake Mary as well. That allowed us to build trust and really build some strong relationships with the communities. In terms of my top issue, I did a lot with consumer protection. When I was on TV for years, we fought for that. That's going to be a big issue for me, and specifically senior issues. I'm now taking care of my mom, who also lives in Seminole County. She's a senior on assisted living, and seniors are absolutely just getting scammed too many times. She gets 55 calls a day. We have to continue to fight for consumer protection and also for our seniors. And also, it's a business forum. We've got to make sure government is not in the way of businesses. We'll talk about that a lot today. Great to be with you this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. Today, this morning. We had a great debate last night, and we're going to tell truth from this microphone here about what's going on in this county. I'm a longtime resident of this county, been around these parts of the country since 1985. I've been into a lot of the businesses in this county and Volusia County throughout the state of Florida that have government contracts. I was the guy that led teams in. If you've been on new contracts, I was the guy that was the one that had this a stop gate, whether you got the contract or not. I also oversaw the procurement of a lot of things that were bought in this county here. I've been in a lot of the defense contractors and government contractors facilities over the past 35 years, and I fought fraud, waste, and abuse. We shut down the ones that were scamming the government. We put them in jail. We took away their contracts, but we also gave contracts and gave money to companies that were designing new products, new technology that you see going on in the world today. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bale, Dalton. Rebecca, thank you, and it's great to be here at the Seminole County Chamber once again. I was born and raised here in Central Florida. I live in Sanford. The Navy is what brought my family to NAS Sanford originally, and I've been on my own Navy adventure, 24 years now in the Navy and Navy Reserve, mostly supporting special operations as a helicopter pilot throughout Iraq, Afghanistan, the Horn of Africa, and throughout the Pacific. And I think especially prescient for this crowd is, pushing warfighter requirements back to our acquisitions officials, and we've got a lot to say about how we can do better there. I worked for Senator Bill Nelson on his team when he was our senator, doing national defense and foreign affairs policy, and especially veteran services, making sure our Florida veterans got the benefits that they earned and the care that they needed. And of course, lastly, I was able to help lead NASA. Over 16,000 engineers, scientists, researchers across 14 centers across the country. And one of the very first things that we did that I'll get back to is work on our small business authorities there. Look forward to your questions.
My name is Congressman Cory Mills. I am the current congressman representing Seminole County and Volusia, part of at least half. I'm a U.S. Army combat veteran. I lead the entire state of Florida out of 28 congressional districts with over $107 million brought back in constituent services. I sit as a member of the Armed Services Committee as well as for the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We've actually had the top rating when it comes to fiscal responsibility and conservative voting while in Congress. We've continued to look at everything from passing the big, beautiful bill to look at how we can support businesses, stop deregulation, but also look at onshoring and making sure that we prioritize American business, American innovation, and the American worker. I think that's an important step when we talk about tariffs, economies of scale, rare earth materials, but also IP protection, where billions of dollars is continually stolen by the Chinese. So what we're going to continue to do is fight for policies that will not only try and protect American businesses, but deregulate them to where you're able to run and keep the federal government out of your lives, because I can tell you that more government doesn't mean more governance.
Good morning. I'm Marialana Kinter. I am a Navy veteran, a former mechanic and nuclear reactor supervisor. And the priority that I'm taking today is talking about small businesses, breaking up mega corporations, and getting mega corporation and lobbyist money out of politics so that we can have regulation and policy that helps our small businesses thrive, as well as regulating AI as part of consumer protections to prevent scamming, to prevent automation of workforce, and to quit de-influencing and stop prioritizing American taxpayers, which should be our #1 priority every single day. Thank you.
Thank you. We had mic problems last night. I don't want to have that again today. I am Sarah Ulrich. I am a 7th-generation Floridian. I have a degree in finance, an MBA, corporate America experience, and I own a small business where we renovate homes. I am the only candidate up here who does not have ties to DC, and I am very proud of that because I plan to go there and represent the people. I want to protect the US dollar. That is the first thing that will kill us as a nation, is if we lose our spending power, and that will hurt all small businesses. I also want to protect our corporate IP. I think that's very important. Again, going to China and having them steal from us, they are spying on us, and they are a great adversary we need to watch. And I'm also not promising to bring a lot of money back from DC. We need to stop spending so much, and the first place that starts is with earmarks.
Okay. The first question, this is going to be for you, Mr. Johnson. Is it the federal government's or the state's role to provide oversight and regulation on AI and data centers? And if you believe in regulation or oversight is even needed at all?
I believe that the federal government does have a role in doing oversight because AI is going to be an international issue. And I say issue because it's taking over jobs, and the young folks are very frightened with what's happening. You've probably seen speakers at colleges being booed and students walking out when they introduce AI in the audience and start talking about it. I think there should be regulations regarding the use of it, and I hope that everyone in this audience here realizes that we have children and they're easily gullible, and AI needs to be brought in and protect the children of this area. Thank you.
This is a tough question. We actually just had a quick little sidebar about this and how difficult it is to appropriately regulate or try to control our emerging technologies. And I agree with Michael in that, if we're talking about AI as a thing, right? AI as an entity, there's a lot that we're seeing through these algorithms and things that are affecting our young people really negatively. And by that, I mean like how they are thinking and how they are growing and maturing as they raise up. And then, of course, with whether you're graduating from a four-year institution or a trade school, we're worried about AI as a tool being used inappropriately to replace, human work. And I will always be an advocate, especially having seen it up close and personal at NASA. You need a human in the loop, especially when you're talking about high-risk decision-making and risk decision analysis. That's imperative. And there's 60 seconds, not enough time to talk about what the real regulations would be on how we're actually producing AI or trying to stay ahead with our research and development and technology against our country competitors like China.
I was going to wait for the applause. My apologies. No, I think you're going to hear a general consensus that AI is growing at such a rate that it's very difficult to maintain and keep up regulation. But there are things that need to be done at the federal level to put in at least the base foundations. One, we have to protect our children and make sure that AI is not being utilized for malign activities to target children online, especially when it comes to internet and purveyors. But we also have to acknowledge the fact that the AI race is our equivalent to the space race under the Reagan age. We can't fall behind on this or quantum entanglement capabilities. We know that this additional technology is beneficial to our United States military. As a person who sits on the subcommittees for both military readiness, military personnel, and intelligence special operations, I can tell you the key role that AI comes in place, but I think that there has to be federal regulations that maintain it so it can't be utilized against Americans in a malign activity, but also at the state levels where each individual state has a right to go ahead and put in and set forth its own governance.
Coming from nuclear power, I understand, I've seen it firsthand how technology and automation helps protect safety measures, helps reinforce safety. It can help human operators extensively. However, a failure to regulate it is a failure to protect our communities, to protect our children, to protect trade workers, hospital workers, and American taxpayers, which is what it comes down to. The rapid rate at which AI is growing is using up our usable land that could be used for either businesses or residential areas, as well as ruining the rural boundary with plans to build mega data centers that are going to completely destroy and annihilate the rural boundary that we have worked decades to protect, as well as further the exasperation of our water issue, where heavy metal and heavy water is getting in. And it is no surprise, and there is a distinct correlation to why so many tech billionaires and tech millionaires are at political inaugurations, because they want our politicians to serve them, not to serve our communities and fight to protect our communities against dangerous regulation, automation, and predators.
I absolutely think the federal government should regulate this. I'm not usually in favor of higher regulations, but this is protecting the American people. We know that one of our greatest vulnerabilities is that we are connected to the network. Our military is vulnerable. Our systems are vulnerable, our utilities are vulnerable, and AI is very good at problem solving, and it is going to exploit our vulnerabilities. We've seen this last week. One of the test environments was breached, and it went against what it was programmed to do. Well, the AI is only as smart as how it's programmed, and it's very hard to work within a test environment and then put that in the real world and not expect it to change. We need to put in a floor. We need people to trust the reality that they see, or that will rip this nation apart. Not being able to trust what your politicians are saying or doing is very dangerous. We need to make sure things are labeled accurately so that we know what reality is.
I think your questions primarily had to do with data centers rather than AI, so that's what I'm going to address. Data centers are a hazard to people in the same way that anything that gets built next to you or in your neighborhood is potentially a hazard to people, whether it's a data center or it's a pig farm. Believe me, I've been to a few pig farms, so I know what I'm talking about. The reason why we have to protect people is a 700-year-old law called the nuisance law. Whereas if something's in your neighborhood and it's bothering you, then you get to shut that down or limit it so that it doesn't bother you anymore. That's what we need to do with data centers, whether it's the federal government or the state government. If a data center comes into your neighborhood and your utilities double, that's got to stop. If a data center comes to your neighborhood and you turn on the tap and nothing comes out, that's got to stop. This is the kind of common sense regulation that needs to apply here to everything.
I think for many of us in this room, AI is certainly the biggest technology jump we have ever seen. And the U.S. government is focused on AI and quantum. In fact, they just, at July 25th, put out an AI plan which encourages innovation. And we also have to have guardrails. I think as lawmakers, we want to be a forward-thinking lawmaking body. You have to react and looking forward ahead of time, not looking back. And we have a lot of things we have to consider about AI with children and many things. We mentioned regulation. Senate Bill 484, there's nothing at the federal level with data centers. There is for the state of Florida. They jumped ahead of that and at least put regulations and guardrails in. We have to have that with AI. We've got to stay ahead. We are competing against China and many companies in many countries, and I believe we are ahead in that, but we've got to have regulations. We have to make sure that there is oversight. Nearly 60% of small businesses use AI daily. We've got to make sure we continue to innovate and let those businesses grow, but there has to be some regulations involved.
Good morning. The question is for every candidate, but we'll continue the order, and you'll be the first, Mr. Dalton. Your district has remained among the fastest growing parts of Central Florida. What federal transportation or infrastructure grant would you pursue in your district?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, I think everybody up here is probably joins me in knowing that we live in probably the greatest area of the greatest state and the greatest nation. Like, when I get to talk about this district, I can't help but smile. From, Wekiva Springs and Blue Springs to the west, all the way to our Atlantic seaboard. I know we're doing some work, and don't mean to steal anybody's thunder from up here. We're doing some work here, but this answer that I had previously to this, I think, is still important, which is Volusia County, especially southeast Volusia County, in between Patrick Space Force Base and Jacksonville Naval Air Station, seems to have been left behind when it comes to the infrastructure that the Army Corps of Engineers can help us out with in terms of shoring up our shoreline and doing beach replenishment projects. So that's high on my mind, probably because I was an ocean engineer back in my Naval Academy days, and I like to play in the sand. But I think we've seen a lot of improvements over time with 44 and 46 taking us east-west in this district, and I think that there are other good projects that can come from making sure we're trying to get some cars off the road, and especially the Chamber has done some great work with EV.
Well, I just want to caveat that, one of the things that Bale just talked about is absolutely true. For over a decade and a half, we've not even had a single, what they call a 203 beach erosion study in Volusia County. The previous two members of Congress who held this wasn't able to get it. As of 2 days ago, after our calls and the threats of utilizing the Homeland Act against the United States Army Corps of Engineers, they've now agreed to not only pay for the entire beach erosion study, but it's going to be starting next week. This is going to be a key thing with making sure that we bring revenue and maintain revenue when it comes to tourism. But also, we have to look at the infrastructure programs when it comes to things like supporting Amtrak and the auto rail. We have a very, very key thing here, which is unlike others, where our auto industry industry here is actually thriving when it comes from the auctions. And the reason for that is because of the auto rail that transports from here up the Northeast. And so we have to continue to try and support this type of thing, but also look at the build out as we see 900 plus people moving into the state of Florida. Affordability and infrastructure must be one of the key priorities.
When it comes to transportation and infrastructure, we have repeatedly seen partisanship get in the way of prioritizing the Floridians who live here. We've seen federal grants and federal incentives turned away because of partisanship, because of the red versus blue divide, instead of directing these grants and incentives into what matters, which is building the infrastructure in a way that helps the Floridians who live here. I just met with Lake Helen leadership, and they were telling me that they have a massive flood issue due to a recent highway development project that directed all of the stormwater runoff directly into their fields and directly into residential areas. And so building on infrastructure that protects the people who live here and alleviates the massive congestion that we have. I'm talking to people who are driving 10 miles and it's taking them upwards of 45 minutes to get 10 miles away. That's unacceptable. Nationwide, we're seeing public transit utilized to bolster businesses, real estate, commercial, and residential living areas. And a large portion of Seminole County lives and works in the metropolitan area directly south, and extending public transportation to help our workers is much better than not.
Y'all aren't going to like this answer. Florida is a donor state. We send out more in federal tax dollars than we ever get back. I would really like to see us be able to keep that money instead of begging for our own money back and not getting a full return. I cannot go and say, I think we need to reduce our debt, shore up our dollar, and let people keep more of the money they earn, and then go there and ask for a lot of earmarks. Now, I realize that's not the way it works now, but is the way that I think it should work, and I think it is the way that we save this country. I think that builders are making a lot of money. They are increasing the congestion, and they are not putting into the infrastructure. If you are benefiting from this great state and from all the things that we provide, you should also have to put your hand into making sure that it works and continues down the road and not expect taxpayers to pay for it instead.
I think that regarding traffic and transportation, we have to treat traffic jams as the enemy. And they're not hard to find, by the way. I ran into one just on the way over here this morning. The traffic jams are entirely unnecessary. If there's one thing that human beings can control collectively, it's how the traffic flows. So we have to systematically build out wherever there's an accumulation that slows people down, because a traffic jam is a tax. It's a tax on your life. It's a tax on your time. And that's why I got more than $1 billion of road money into Central Florida and Orlando when I was in Congress, because I didn't want people to waste their lives, waste their time in traffic. Now, there's a related issue, which is not the same, but I think it's still important. Water and sewer is disastrous here in Central Florida. I have $1 million home. I dig my water out of a hole in the back, and I dump it into a hole in the front. The septic tank system is unhealthy, unsafe. We need to replace it entirely for everyone.
So two thoughts come to mind. First of all, Volusia County, we have 47 miles of coastline there, and flooding remediation is critical. I talked to New Smyrna Beach Mayor about that, and also just some of the beach renourishment. So it's good to hear that study is going on, because that is critical for us. We were hit with 4 hurricanes in a span of 6 or 7 years, and it takes months, if not years, to recover from that. And I think about our growth. We have tremendous growth. Think of where we're at in Seminole County. What do you see every day going into Volusia County in the opposite way? Right there between Seminole and Volusia County. That is one of my big focuses. I sat down with DeBerry leaders, a number of issues there that we could do. 1792 can be rewidened. There can also be some things that are buried in that area. Those are grants from the federal government that make a tremendous difference. We're growing, and that's great. It helps a lot from the economy, but we've got to grow the infrastructure and continue to not only focus on the coastline in Volusia County, but also focus on the infrastructure here in Seminole County, which is growing at a rapid rate.
My first manager in the federal government was a program manager for the National Defense Highway System. That was the interstate system we have today. It was designed for the Defense Department mainly for national security. We pay a lot of money in to the federal government, gas taxes, tire taxes, battery taxes, or income taxes. And this district is giving up billions of dollars a year to Washington, D.C., and we're getting $1 back for every $6 that we send in. And over the past 3 years, we really have gotten nothing back for the general public in this area here from the current congressman. The highway system is very important to not just national defense, but also to our day-to-day commute. When I went to debate last night, leaving Seminole County, going to Volusia County, the gridlock is unbearable, and no one has done anything about it in the current Congress. When we get in Congress, we're going to make sure the highway funding is put back in this district like it should. Thank you.
All right, next question, we'll start with Mr. Mills. Energy prices keep increasing, particularly with the war in Iran affecting gas prices. How can the federal government stabilize energy costs and reduce our dependency on foreign oil, particularly through the use of renewables and storage?
It's a great question. Look, at the end of the day, energy dominance is going to be the key to allowing us to go ahead and get costs down in America. Not only does it go ahead and lower the heating and cooling costs in our home, but it also lowers the transportation costs for commerce, which makes it cheaper for us to buy as consumers. The key issue for us, however, is that we haven't explored all areas of energy. I'm one of those that believes that we should be looking even more into nuclear energy, which is one of the cleanest, safest, and reliable. You can even utilize spent nuclear fission at this point, which are at fractions of a cent per kilowatt. We have to get past the stigma of Fukushima, 9 Mile Island, and Chernobyl, and start realizing that all production of energy is going to allow us to have affordability here in the home state of Florida.
As a nuclear reactor supervisor, I love this question. Energy is the path forward, and Mr. Mills said something very important, energy dominance. But the way that we achieve that is energy independence. We achieve energy dominance through energy independence, through not relying on foreign nations and being at their whims for outsourcing our energy production. We need to build resilient grid structure here, as well as through utilizing renewable resources like nuclear power. And right now, we do not have a single member of Congress who has nuclear experience, which is valuable in determining the future of the nation. We have already agreed to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 previously as a nation in order to strengthen our energy production and our jobs and trades and who we are outsourcing to. And in order to do that, we have to be developing off of grids that already exist. We have nuclear plants here that could provide the majority of energy across the state if we continue to develop it using the infrastructure that already exists.
One really hard thing on businesses is price fluctuations, not being able to determine what your costs are ahead of time and plan for the future. This quagmire in Iran is interesting because our oil prices are going up and down and up and down, but we've been told that most of our oil does not come from Iran. So why are our prices going up and down? Why are companies making record profits? It's because they're price gouging because they can, because the American consumer expects it, so they're doing it. We need to stop that, and we do need to make sure that we are energy independent. We have great resources. I do like nuclear power. It is clean. It is efficient. I would even love to see some geothermal energy used in homes. We can make this happen. There's just no appetite or will to do it.
I think the question was, how do we make energy and driving and so on affordable for us here locally? Nuclear power is the power of the future, and it always will be. We're always 20 years away from fusion. We've been 20 years away from fusion for 50 years now. I know a little bit about this because I actually was the chairman of the House subcommittee on this. And I don't think we can rely upon dreams in order to solve our problems. How about something practical? No more tolls. We are the most heavily tolled location in the entire United States. No more tolls. The bond that pays for 408 was paid off 50 years ago. There's no reason for any more tolls here locally. No reason. No more gas tax. Why do we tax driving? When are we going to start taxing breathing? If we're taxing driving, maybe we should be taxing breathing as well. It doesn't make any sense that the government tries to raise money because you have to get from point A to point B. This is what we should be concentrating on, dealing with our real problems in a real way.
Well, obviously, energy drives so much of the inflation we're seeing. We're energy independent now. We do need to move toward being energy dominant. So how do we do that? Part of that is permits, streamlining that, making sure that the permits are able to be there. And when you look at last year in 2025, we had record crude production and we had record LNG exporting. We are moving in the right direction on that front for sure. That's a big issue. We need to look at nuclear, we need to look at coal, also natural gas, and we need to look at streamlining some of that permitting as well and make sure that from an energy standpoint, that's the biggest way to drive not only cost savings for consumers, but it reverberates through all of our economy for sure. But the streamlining makes a difference, and I think those numbers in 2025 show that we are moving in the right direction. It starts with permitting, and it starts with regulations.
I believe in competition, and competition has brought the innovations to our society. I'm amazed when I see the sound and light system in this room here. Microelectronics, getting smaller amounts of electricity into our appliances will cut our use of energy. I believe in competition between the different utilities. In some states like Texas, you get to compete and choose your electric company and water companies in the same city, and you get to use the common lines, but you still have a choice of the utility company. That's competition. I believe that the money that we have, that we send to Washington, D.C., needs to come back to this district for lots of reasons. And I believe in all kinds of energy. I believe in competition energy. I like electric cars. I also believe that we have over 1,000 years worth of oil supplies in this country. I have family members that work for oil drilling companies, and we have plenty of oil in this country.
You guys are incredibly patient to listen to 7 people answer the same question, but I think this question is hugely important because I actually think it is existential to what our problems are right now in terms of affordability issues and what folks are struggling with across the board, right? We could talk about the high prices at the gas tank and the fact that that affects our wallets today and tomorrow, or we could talk about the fact that lack of oversight from Tallahassee on some of our utilities providers here in this state have led to the highest rate increase for some ratepayers in the history of this country, which is wild that that has happened here in Florida. But I do want to talk about what we can do at the federal level. I am an all of the above energy solutions advocate. We talk about energy dominance. I totally agree, but what we have to get to first to get to dominance is energy resilience. We are being pushed through the winds, no pun intended, on this. And I don't know when renewable energies became such a political football up in DC. Again, we need to be doing an all of the above approach and quit abdicating research and development and technology wins to our competitors in China.
Okay, next question. We'll just, like I said, we'll keep moving down the line, Ms. Kinter. Sole proprietors and micro businesses pay some of the highest tax rates, but are the largest ignored by federal government reform, except for the 2017 tax Trump cuts. Will you advocate for tax relief for this group of small businesses?
Absolutely, to the point where it was in my introduction of breaking down these mega corporations that are pushing small businesses and micro businesses under. We have to prioritize the people who live, work, pay taxes here, and stop subsidizing these mega corporations who refuse to pay people a living wage, outsource their labor to extremely cheap overseas options. And we need to build that resiliency and prioritize our businesses here, prioritize the American taxpayers, and prioritize the American workers that are doing the jobs that are lifting these businesses up, and have a Central Florida where small businesses thrive. They aren't drowned in regulation, they aren't drowned in excessive licensing, but they're celebrated, they're uplifting. In every small town, Lake Helen, Orange City has a main street that is filled, teeming with small businesses owned by families, owned by our families. And that's the path forward for Central Florida.
We have got to stop large corporations from running the show. It is no surprise that we are run by a shadow government, which is large corporations. The top 11 have the same revenue as the federal government. They are buying our politicians before they even get to office. That is why they are doing the bidding of those corporations and special interests, and not what we, the people, want them to do. Another issue, double taxation. I would love to see barriers to entry removed. I want to see savings accounts not taxed so that when you earn money and you save that money, you get to keep that money. We are putting a lot of burden on our small businesses. I know what I paid in taxes last year, and I know what corporations are paying in taxes, and my tax rate is much higher than theirs. And the system is working for them because it was written by them and for them, and it is time that we take that back and say, no, it is by us and for us, and you work for us.
I want to make sure I understand your question. Is your question regarding microbusiness meaning 1 or 2 employees? Is that what you mean?
Sole proprietors, small businesses.
Okay, well, the primary answer to that is a bill that I introduced when I was in Congress called the War is Making You Poor Act. And under my bill, nobody who made less than $50,000, which includes most small businesses, self-proprietors and so on, nobody who sells on eBay and so on, nobody should have to pay any federal taxes. So my bill, the War is Making You Poor Act, zeroes out federal taxes for anybody making less than $50,000. And I think that's most important for the micro businesses that you describe, because they often have no benefits. So self-employment arrangement often means no health insurance, no paid vacation, nothing like that. So they're the ones who really do need the relief. More generally, I support progressive taxation. I think that Elon Musk should have to pay a higher tax rate than you or me. I'm pretty sure about that one. Thank you.
So obviously, we've got a lot of small business owners in this room, and micro businesses takes it to an even smaller level. And if you think what makes most small businesses fail, it's access to capital. You want to get innovation and risk and make that a reward for that. So access to capital is big, and whatever we can do for small businesses, absolutely. They're the ones that are going to grow our economy, and we want those businesses to succeed. It is critical. We know people in this room that it is a challenge to start that small business, especially when it's a very small business. Anything that you can get that you can help to hire an additional employee to expand, maybe it's into AI or a different form, whatever we can do to put money back in their pocket and keep them successful and make sure they're not in that stat of a small business or a micro business that failed, it makes a difference. And often, it's not always the idea, it's the access to capital many times.
I believe that some of the taxes that they just raised in Seminole County need to be rolled back. A lot of people start out in the business, they have to go online, pay fees here, pay fees there. And I have to say Tallahassee and our current government there has reduced some of the regulations regarding small businesses. The filing fees have been reduced. I believe that a lot of the fees need to be rolled back still even more, for the small businesses. I also believe that there should be a little bit more look into the intangible tax. Some people say it's still there, some people say it's not. There's a rental tax on rental property. A lot of people don't pay the tax. They're being hunted down by the government right now. Somebody on this stage is actually in that predicament right now. So I believe that taxes should be rolled back for small business. They should be the ones getting exemptions, more so than the rich millionaires that own multi-million-dollar mansions.
Well, I think the number one thing that we can do for small businesses of any size is roll back these illegal tariff taxes. We know, especially here in Seminole County and throughout District 7, that our small businesses are getting squeezed on both ends with the higher cost of raw materials, making folks have to raise their prices, lose customers, and not be able to take care of their employees. And now we see that the tariffs, having been ruled illegal, are starting to come out of our treasury and back to corporations. Well, what corporations are they going to? $6 billion to Amazon, $2 billion to Apple. I am a consumer. I haven't seen any of that money I've paid in tariff taxes back, and I don't think small businesses have either. So that's number one problem. Number two problem is the ACA subsidies having expired. We know that takes tools away from especially small businesses being able to take care of their employees if they are even able to get to the level of providing some benefits. And the last thing I'll say on the very small businesses, absolutely that they need a tax cut, and we should maybe look at both how many employees that they have and what their margins of revenue are to try to create a structure there.
This is a great question. This is a great question. So this year I was actually awarded by the National Taxpayers Union the award for fighting the hardest to try and cut taxes for the American people. The other thing I would say is that with small businesses, and especially having been a business owner, had over 127 employees, one of the things that we had a problem with was getting the necessary capital and being able to work with SBA. SBA gets a tremendous amount of federal funding, and instead of actually evaluating a business and what capital they need to grow, they just look at the small minutia and say, okay, you're capped at $5 million. If you're a small to medium-sized business that's trying to grow, that might not be enough for you to be able to get where you need to be. So I think that starting to look at deregulations, I'm the co-sponsor of the REINS Act, looking at permit reforms, but also guaranteeing that we're supporting American innovation and American businesses, not continuing to try and purchase as a consumer to adversarial nations like China.
Starting with Ms. Ulrich, our members are watching the property tax amendment very closely. While this is a state issue primarily, how do you believe the federal government can help businesses if this passes?
Stay the heck out of the way. I think that we need states to be sovereign. The less the federal government does, the better. It has a very small mandate, very small scope. It is to protect the American people. We don't want them involved in our state. We need to push those issues down to the lowest level possible, because when money is kept at a lower level, it is spent wisely. You don't have the waste and fraud, and people can see what it's doing in their community. They know how to spend their own money the best. I do not like the proposed tax cuts. Although I do own a home, I pay a lot in taxes. I would love to see that reduced. I do not want to see this move to the state control, because there will be winners and losers, and we will lose part of our voice.
I support the large dramatic increases in the homestead exemption, because a homestead exemption should correspond to the value of your home. And it's cheating people to say we're going to give you a $50,000 homestead exemption when in fact their homes cost $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. It's not fair, it's not right, it's fundamentally dishonest. So the tax system that we have right now that's going to be changed if the constitutional amendment passes has to be changed and ought to be changed. The question is, where's the money going to come from? Are we going to call 911 and nobody's going to answer? It has to come from somewhere, right? Now, I feel that the federal government can act as a backstop on that, because the federal government already makes what are called equalization payments to many school districts around the country. That could keep our kids in school. I brought in an extra $100 million from the federal government just to Orange County alone when I was elected to Congress, an extra $100 million in my first year in Congress. There were 6 schools that were scheduled to close. None of them closed. Alan Grayson saved our schools.
So I've spoken to thousands of voters over the last 3 months. This is probably the number one issue. Here we're going on a federal campaign, but when I go to their door, this is what they want to talk about. And we talk about it because you're representing them and it matters to them. Here's the issue. I talk to a lot of homeowners that are confused. I talk to state lawmakers I really respect that say the money's there. Then I talk to some local municipalities and mayors who say we don't know how we're going to figure this out. So there's a lot of math to do on this. There's a lot of people impacted. There are a lot of services that are there. We're in the process of reaching out to every city in this district to see exactly what they believe it's going to do to them, how it's going to impact them. At the federal level, there are some backstops. Former Congressman Grayson is right that can be done. This is primarily, though, a state-level issue. And I can tell you, people want to be educated to know, how is this going to affect my taxes? But then more importantly, how is this going to affect my services? Because there's no doubt, when we're at a time where inflation's already high, when people go to the ballot at 60%, will they vote for their pocketbook or will they look at all the other issues? So I think we need more on this. It is critical to find out exactly the numbers and see how it affects our communities.
I support the amendment that will reduce and give higher exemptions for property owners. But what I do worry about are the politicians locally that will put the burden on the businesses. I'm absolutely against giving the burden to the businesses and the people who own second and third homes. I think that we need to keep an eye on those politicians and keep them from doing that. What we need to look at is cutting government spending. Even in this city, Mayor, in this county, in Volusia County, they need to look at cutting the government down. When I've been to like 19 different commission meetings throughout the 2 counties here over the past 3 months, and most of the meetings is taken up by non-government discussions. You know, when they get to the actual discussion of running government, it's very limited time in most of the meetings I've been to. I also believe that the federal government can help in building more roads and take the burden off the local cities like here in Lake Mary and Volusia County and spend more money with funds because we've got trillions of dollars in the highway trust fund right now that could be used. Thank you.
I totally agree that our property tax system and assessment is broken, but this solution, air quotes, ain't it. You know, I've heard from every mayor, from every police chief, from every fire chief that I talked to that they are already worried about the training and retention of their forces. They're already worried about trying to ensure that we have the services that we actually want to pay for as citizens and a normal society here in District 7. And, you know, I don't want my mayors or county commissioners to have to go to Tallahassee to beg, just like we've had a lot of answers to questions that we don't necessarily want our congressperson to have to go to the federal government to beg. So I appreciate the question on like what federal backstops could there be. Let's not depend on one. This property tax measure is not the solution, and we need to make sure that it gets defeated for all the reasons, you know, that I just stated. We don't want the federal government to have to come in and bail us out because as Floridians, we want to use air money in the way that it's going to help support us. And the way that we can do that is keeping our money close by through home rule that we as Floridians since the beginning of this state have valued to a point. So we need to vote against this measure.
One of the biggest things I think you're hearing across the stage, which I agree with, is that we need a limit in federal government. We need to empower our states to actually do what they're supposed to do because our state in Florida has done an amazing job. I think that the other problem is that when is homeowners actually going to ever own their home? You go through the process of paying for your home, but you never actually continually own it because you're constantly having to pay repetitively over and over and over. I think that we need to improve that, but it's not through federal solutions. To Mr. Dalton's point, we have had to go and get millions and millions of dollars for Seminole County Sheriff's offices, for Volusia County to offset some of the things that are going on so that they can have the necessary equipment and the things that they need moving forward. We've done the same thing when it comes to the septic to sewage programs or even from water pump facilities throughout Seminole and Volusia to help with water retention capabilities where we're overdeveloping in our areas and we're not thinking about where the runoff is. So I think the biggest thing for me right now is to make sure we've got responsible building, that we make sure that we're actually able to look at our tax capabilities, but also that we're not relying on the federal government to solve every problem because in most cases the federal government is the problem.
I went to Tallahassee to sit in on this meeting and witness it, and what I saw was fire chief after fire chief, police chief after police chief stand up and say this is going to remove our funding to vote against it. The only people I have heard consistently support this measure has been the politicians in power who are going to be issuing the grants, who are going to be lording this state money above municipalities. And then I came back to Central Florida after being in Tallahassee and spoke to city commissioners, to council members, and heard and saw their plans that they're worried that their municipalities are going to become insolvent, and they showed me the plans that they will be bankrupt within a few years if we get rid of this property tax and if we completely annihilate the funding. And we're going to see things like subscription-based park allowances, closing of libraries, issuing of toll roads because they won't have any more money to keep up infrastructure. And we cannot rely on the federal government, which is already trillions of dollars in debt, who has not balanced a budget in decades properly. We cannot rely on them to hand money to the state that doesn't exist. The best way to do it is to defeat this ballot measure.
Thank you. We will now ask for a 30-second close from each of you, and I will call out the order. We're going to start with Mr. Elijah.
Well, first of all, thank you for hosting. It was great to be here today. We've got a big decision to make August 18th. We've been endorsed by most Seminole County leaders, and the one thing I hear from a lot of voters, they want to be heard by their local government and by their federal government. That is something I'm committed to. I've invested in this community, and I like the form of unity that we have in this campaign from not only leaders that believe we're heading the right direction, but also voters that put their trust to represent them. Our representative in Washington is critical to listen to our needs and fight for those and represent us in D.C. Thanks for being here today.
Mr. Mills?
Thank you so much, and again, I appreciate you having this great event. Look, we lead the state of Florida in constituent services, over $107 million that we've brought back, tens of millions that's gone into infrastructure programs, as well as supporting our law enforcement, to include things like $500,000 to juvenile mobile crisis programs, making sure we're taking care and protecting our kids. So we're going to continue to fight for Americans, as I did with rescuing over 400 Americans abroad, and we're going to continue to lead in a fiscally responsible way that allows us to support Central Florida and its growth.
Ms. Kinter?
The first step towards having a Florida that works for Floridians is getting money out of politics. I said it in the introduction. Now I'm going to plug the fact that we are one of the only candidates who have done that. We have raised over $500,000 with an average donation of $21 from Democrats, from Republicans, from veterans, teachers, military members, Floridians who live and pay taxes here, because that is the way forward, from getting on the ballot via petitioning to building a bipartisan coalition of community leaders. We have to prioritize the small businesses, the taxpayers, the workers here, and that's the path forward. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Grayson?
Well, your question basically is, what do you get if you vote for Alan Grayson? And the answer is you get more. That's the way it was when I was in Congress before. I cut foreclosures here in half during the great housing crisis through the Grayson mandatory mediation program. It was so successful that it was adopted by order of the Florida Supreme Court throughout the entire state. There are tens of thousands of families here, right here, who are in their homes because I did that. Nobody told me to do it. Nobody ordered me to do it. It's not something I voted on. I made it happen. And that's the way, that's what you deserve in Congress. Somebody who's going to make good things happen.
Time. Mr. Johnson?
If you vote for me, we're going to bring back our money back home here. I was in the government for many years, and we knew about the paper process behind the scenes, in and out. We went to months and months of training to learn all the rules, the do's and don'ts, and I'm the only person on this stage that's actually done that kind of work for 30 plus years. And if you elect me to Congress, we're going to make sure we get every dime that we can squeeze out of the federal government that we put in when we did our taxes. We want that money back here. I have the experience to do it, and I have done it. Please vote for Mike Johnson. Thank you.
Ms. Ulrich?
You have a choice. You have a choice between the establishment and representation. If you like the way the government is working now and the things they're getting done, vote for the establishment. If you want to change and you want real representation, vote for someone who will represent you because they know what it is like to be you. They live with you, they work with you, they own a business, and they know what the struggles are and what you are facing, and you can trust me to have your back.
Mr. Dalton?
Thanks, Lauren. It is great to be here, and thank you all for having us and your attention. Look, I'm not up here to fight with anybody up here on this table. I'm here to fight for you. I'm born and raised here. I live here in Sanford, and no matter what, and no matter how it happened, we voted for a government that would be working more efficiently, an economy that would be getting better, and a government that would be focused on our struggles here at home. No matter who you voted for, that ain't happening right now. And we need a change. My name's Bale Dalton. I'm here to give you that change.
Can we please give them a round of applause for being willing to serve?